ice cream went purple, and all of a sudden, Dave was going kind of nuts by that. His words were, "I don't think this would be."
Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's special committee of the whole meeting, and welcome to those that are watching on the cable channel as well. Could I have a roll call, please?
Finkler is excused. Hammer.
Here.
Lawson.
Here.
Motive.
Present.
Reed.
Here.
Relke is also excused. Rostad.
Here.
I acknowledge this meeting was posted and noticed according to law.
Okay, thank you. I would look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda of the special committee of the whole.
Motive will make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Motion by Alder Motive, second by Alder Rosted to approve tonight's agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Public comment for this meeting? Nope. Okay, and then on to new business. First on the agenda is to discuss the Eastern Columbia County Joint Municipal Court 2025 budget. And if there, so Columbus is part of the Eastern Columbia County Municipal Court, and along with some other townships, villages, and city. And attached is the proposed budget, and if there are any questions from anybody. So, Alder Motive.
When I reviewed it, it looks pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of increases or changes, and I recommend we move it forward.
Alder Rusted.
Well, we just have to approve it, right?
We just,
There's,
yeah,
This isn't broke down to the city of Columbus specifically.
no. We're just approving the budget for, and the other communities that are doing the same thing.
I did have one. I thought I saw a discrepancy, but maybe not.
There was an increase in the judge's wage, some decreases in some of the expenses for mileage, meals, and lodging, being that most of the events are held in the Dells area. The judge and the clerk said that it would make sense just to lower those items because they, instead of staying up there, they would drive back and forth. And I think it's only like a couple of things throughout the year. So, any other discussion on this?
I completely agree. I think the only major change I saw was that there's a new assistant clerk, which makes sense if they're as busy as it sounds like they are.
And part of that is also the person that's doing that now is in what, her second year, is it, Dennis, of doing this? And so they're looking at actually trying to hire 1 day a week the past clerk that had retired, and just to help get caught up on all the filing and that. So, any other questions? Good moving this forward? All right, thank you. And then next on the agenda is discussion regarding the purchase of the fire department command truck. And Scott, if you're on.
Okay, good evening. Sure you got some of the paperwork in front of you. Looking at a 2025 Chevy Silverado. Also working with Belco to get installation of graphics and then installation of equipment like we did for the last pickup. Also adding a topper and a rollout tray so we can put equipment inside of the truck. And I got the bids on this truck in middle of August of this year. Then I sent out, if you see, I don't have another bid because I went to Ewald's, which has the state bid for Dodge and Ford. And we went back and forth with email a couple times, and they never got back to me. So I got no bid, so that's the only ones I got the state bid for, Ford and Dodge. So I didn't attempt to go through anybody else, but I guess consider that a no bid. So any questions at this time?
All the rested?
Why is there, why do we not have 3 bids for the graphics and the equipment? I understand the truck thing, but I don't understand the other 2 quotes that are in here. When there's several agencies that do it.
I can't actually give you an honest answer on that because that's where we've taken them in the past and they've done good work, and usually you're quick to get stuff out. So I can get 2 more bids if you want me to.
I just think it would better solidify it. If that, I mean, the Belco quote states right under the change order, allow 5 to 10% potential increase for 25.
Right.
10% on 11,000 is a big chunk of change.
Yeah, I can go get you a couple more quotes on it. If you want, bring it back.
How does the rest of the commission feel? Alder Lawson?
We're looking at later today discussing some of the purchase authority requirements, and some of that could change. Would this be under that revised limit?
I was looking to see if Crystal was in here. I can take a look and see. I mean, ultimately, you could move forward on the vehicle. We could get the vehicle ordered and bring back at the next meeting
The upfitters.
additional quotes for outfitting and get that resolved. I think the critical thing from a timing standpoint is getting the vehicle ordered.
That makes sense to me.
All right. Alder Motive?
Oh, well, $11,000 is a nice chunk of change. It's relatively small within our budget, and I don't think it's worth holding this up. I'd be willing to compromise and approve the vehicle and then have the upfitting done separately, but I don't think it's worth sending it back for 3 estimates.
And if I could add to it, we don't have included in there the trade-in for the pickup for the current truck. So I asked Napleton what they would be willing to give me for it, and I think after hearing they were only willing to give us $2,500 for it, I figured we would put it on the Wisconsin surplus. We're probably just going to take the radio out of the truck and leave the lights and everything in there. So I do have another department in Dane County that may be interested in the truck as well and giving me double that price. So you can count that price into it as well. I don't know what I'll get out of surplus, but if the fire department, or if they're willing to give me $5,000, I think I think best the quicker we get rid of it, because it is rusting. You can see rust setting in underneath. It's already had work on it when Randy was chief, and the passenger side rear fender well is starting to bubble, so it's only a matter of time until that breaks open.
Our last 2 vehicles that went to Wisconsin surplus got more than I anticipated that we would get, so I think that's been a good resource for us.
Do you have some?
Oh,
Alder Reed?
Oh, thank you. So are we just debating on the graphics, but we would be set for the rest of the outfitting? Is that what I'm understanding?
I mean, that's kind of what it's sounding like. Do you have something further?
No, I guess I'm just really not too concerned with trying to get a slightly better rate for the graphics, especially if it's a company that we're very familiar with already. it would be nice to have 2 other quotes, but I don't want to make a delay on it.
And you have something further?
Yeah, so
Ryan?
is the truck not ordered anymore?
No, it's on hold.
Yeah, our conversation, it was already ordered back
Yeah,
in
that-
December.
Yeah, that was on me. That was my fault. I misunderstood the conversation we had. So when he told me we had to still go through, I put it back on hold.
Well, from what I'm hearing is that we move this forward for at least the purchase of the truck portion, and then come back with the other 2 quotes for the
Sure.
to match up with Belco.
Okay.
So, is that good with everybody? Moving forward on that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
And motion by Alder Lawson, second by Alder Rossed to adjourn. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we are adjourned. And we will move on now to the Columbus Common Council regular meeting of Tuesday, January 7th of 2025.
Don't we have to technically vote? All those in favor?
Oh, you're right. Yep. So for the adjournment, thank you. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now we will move on. And I just want to, new technology, so there we go. We're on to the next meeting. All right. Again, welcome to Columbus regular Common Council meeting of this evening, and also welcome to those that are streaming by cable. Could I have a roll call, please?
Vinkler is excused. Hammer,
Here.
Lawson,
Here.
Motive,
Present?
Reed,
Here.
Relke is excused. Rostad.
Here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I acknowledge this meeting was posted and noticed according to law.
Okay, thank you. And I would look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So move.
Second?
Motion by Alder Rosted, second by Alder Motif to approve tonight's agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda approved. Public comment for this? None? Okay. Then we will move on to the consent agenda, which is the December 17th Special Committee of the Whole, the Council and Committee of the Whole meeting minutes.
So move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion by Alder Rosted, second by Alder Lawson to approve tonight's consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda approved. On to new business, which is to consider and take action on the Eastern Columbia County Joint Municipal Court 2025 budget, as what was discussed earlier.
Motion to
Alder.
adopt the Eastern Columbia County Joint Municipality Court 2025 budget as presented.
Alder Motive will second.
Okay, motion by Alder Rosted, second by Alder Motif to approve the budget. Any other discussion on this item? No. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Budget approved. Next would be to consider and take action on the purchase of the fire department command truck, and it would be just for the truck portion only, with the other equipment and graphics coming in at a later date.
Motion to consider purchase of Columbus Fire Department command vehicle to not exceed $66,894.38.
Excuse me, I think that's incorrect if we're not doing the Belco
Correct,
equipment
but
install.
if the other ones come in higher, it's already approved this way.
I see what you're saying. Is that what we need to do, Attorney Johnson, or should we do truck only?
I think, excuse me, I think what Alder Rostad did is fine, but you do need to specify in your motion that you're only doing this for the truck right now. So if the purchase of the 2025 Chevy Silverado at a cap of 66,894.38, that works. I think that's what you said. Yep. And then you can either do a second motion or just add something that you're gonna hold the Belco or the graphics and equipment install for a later decision.
Do you want to include that in your motion, Alder Rested?
Yeah, well, what if,
Yeah.
because if the other two don't come in, if the other two quotes,
I don't know. Oh, well, very good question. Good point. So, all right, let's try this again. So if the Belco equipment comes in underneath what you have in front of you here, are you looking to be able to consider this whole thing done?
correct.
Okay, then we need to start this over again. So, when we started this conversation, you were only gonna discuss the truck. And,
The truck is firm, correct?
and now if you want to bring if you want to try to do the whole thing, I mean, you don't know what the other quotes are gonna be.
So are you trying to approve it contingent to the other two quotes being higher for the equipment? I'm confused.
Correct.
Well-
What I believe Alder Rostad is attempting to do, and I think it's smart, is saying that if the other quotes come in and they're more, go with Belco. If the other quotes come in and they're less, go with the least quote, but that this doesn't need to come back to council.
Correct. It's not gonna be higher. We're not gonna go with a higher quote. So the price is set through Belco.
And I think it makes perfect sense. The challenge is how we make sure to do this to appease any of Paul's concerns from a legal standpoint.
Right.
Well, and it could be higher, right? Because they have that 5 to 10% line in there.
Right.
But the closer you read that, I believe it might be just on that line item.
Well,
It's not everything below it. I gotta find it in my new technology up here.
hey, well, my paper says, allow 5 to 10% potential price increase for 2025. That's what it says on the Belco part,
But under
but that's
What's
still
abo-
only $1,000.
and above that is upfitting, correct?
No, it says above that is change over, sorry.
Correct. So I'm assuming that
Well, I don't like to assume.
no, because then they got that installation of new and existing equipment. Yep, that one good word.
It's like labor is the 3,500 and everything else is equipment.
That's what
I really think we're kind of beating a dead horse. I think we should just approve this as it is and then address moving forward in the purchasing policy that we're going to do if we want these kind of quotes to come in with 3 vendors. I doubt that anybody else is going to come in enough lower to go through the cost of someone's time to look for it.
But this still falls under the old policy of 3 quotes.
But that's as a whole.
Why don't you just approve everything that you have in front of you, and if there's a change order that's gonna come down the road because all the quotes are gonna be higher, you can address it at a different meeting. Or is the hang-up on the 3 quotes, or is the hang-up on the price?
Oh, just the 3 quotes.
Well, if the hang-up's on the 3 quotes, then you want to just carve that off altogether to go back and do that process properly. And then approve the truck, and then when Chief brings in 2 more quotes, and now you have 3, then you can deal with the additional.
So as what was stated, as we were moving forward on this, is that we were going to approve the purchase of the truck. The truck is $54,499.50. And that's really what our motion should be, is to approve the
Exactly.
purchase
Well,
of the truck.
that's what I thought you were gonna do when we started this conversation.
Yeah.
And then you were gonna leave the rest on the table for later on.
Correct, and that's how it was moved forward. So that's what we need to do, is approve the purchase of the truck.
So we need to amend that motion.
No,
Or just
there's no
withdraw.
second on it yet.
There was no
Yes,
second.
Just start over.
Start over, yeah.
So Alderman Moldif will make a motion to approve the purchase of a 2025 Chevy Silverado in the amount of $54,499.50.
Reed will second.
Okay, motion by Alder Motiv, second by Alder Reed to approve purchase of the 2025 Chevy Silverado. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Rostad,
Nay.
Motiv,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 3-1.
Okay, thank you. Next would be to consider and take action on the job description for the DPW lead and authorization to fill vacancy. And this can all be done under one motion. As soon as we get there.
If you get there.
Eventually.
Just as a follow-up from the last meeting, I know there was a question about wages. I had a little bit of time yesterday, and unfortunately didn't have this in your packet, but I'll pull it up here on the screen. A little bit of research. These communities are currently hiring somewhat similar positions that, I'll kind of go through it. So there are 5 communities that are currently hiring similar positions for DPW. The largest of those communities, Fort Atkinson, they're hiring general labor at $19.11 as a starting wage, equipment operators from $23.49 to $26.18. Mount Horeb is hiring a public services crew person with a starting salary of $25 an hour. Delavan is hiring a maintenance worker in the $25.60 to $27.04 range. And Fenimore, the smallest community represented here, is hiring a maintenance worker $23.88 to $29.50. My takeaway is that our maintenance workers' salaries are very similar, comparable to these communities. And then Fort Atkinson is hiring a crew leader at a salary of $24.67 to $27.49. Cross Plains is hiring a foreman, and that's a salary range of $22.59 to $34.62. So it would also appear that our $33 would seem to be competitive, if not, need to post flyers in Fort Atkinson, I think. But it seems that at least in the marketplace currently, we're in a good place with where the wage would be for the position.
Motive would make a motion to accept the job description and authorize that we fill the vacancy.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Alder Motiv, second by Alder Lawson. Any further discussion on this item? And we would need a roll call for this, please.
Lawson,
Aye.
Rostad,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Motiv.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Okay, thank you. Next would be to consider and take action on resolution number 125, accepting the 2025 to 2027 strategic plan that was discussed at the December 17th meeting.
I'll also add that for anyone interested, I'm doing a presentation to the Rotary tomorrow at noon on the hopefully newly adopted strategic plan of the City of Columbus.
I move to adopt resolution number 1-25 and accept the 2025 to 2027 strategic plan.
Motive will second.
Okay, motion by Alder Lawson, second by Alder Motive. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is to approve the claims in the amount of $398,914.52.
Motive will make a motion to approve the claims in the amount of $398,914.52.
Second.
Okay, motion by Alder Motive, second by Alder Rostedt. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Lawson,
Aye.
Motive,
Aye.
Rostad,
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Okay, thank you. And then next would be reports of city officers, and Matt?
Yeah, I will just start out, the strategic plan, I know we kind of glanced over it here really quickly a couple minutes ago. There's a lot of people that I want to thank. We had a staff committee that worked on this for a bulk of 2024, and that included Amy Jo Myers, David Bennett, and Susan Kane working with myself. We held a number of public input opportunities. We did a number of updates with the council. A lot of effort went into creating the plan, and now the real hard work starts of working to implement it. We'll be working with staff on, we're planning, in the process of planning a retreat to kind of, a portion of that retreat with the staff is going to be on that implementation process and how we go about getting going on those strategic objectives. So again, that's going to be a big thing for 2025. We're going to look to incorporate that into our memos that we're doing so that pretty much everything that comes before you should be tied back to a strategic planning priority, as well as we work on the budget document, we want to include those strategic objectives into the capital budget and into the operating budget where they make sense, as well as we integrate that plan into our day-to-day, how we move forward. So just a little bit there on the strategic plan. Otherwise, just happy to be here in the new year, and hope you and your families and everyone is off to a great start in 2025.
Well, we're happy you're still here, so. Could have been scared away. Dennis, do you have something you wish to? No, I was going to pass. Okay, all right. The only thing, or a couple of things, I'd like to express my sympathies to the family of Shirley Benetsky. Shirley served on the Hillside Cemetery Board and the Community Center Board, and it was an extreme honor for me and privilege to serve with her. She will be missed, and she's a remarkable woman. There is currently an opening on the Cable Commission and an opening on the Community Center Advisory Board. There is an opening on the Utility Commission, although there is somebody that I have contacted, which is supposed to get back to me soon, whether there's any interest or not. And just a reminder that everybody, you can go onto the city's website and look under agendas, and you can find out when meetings are, where they're held, and everybody in this community is more than welcome to attend meetings to see what's all going on. So Thank you. And with that, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
Motive will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Alder Motif, second by Alder Lawson to adjourn. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Do we need to take a break or, okay.
Question from that. The CWD testing, I was gonna ask, it bypassed me. That just annual, or we have a year pass in the claims? We paid $104 to Marshfield Clinic for CWD testing on deer.
We've done that before.
Is it tied to when one passes away?
It's the only way you can usually test a deer.
Correct, and so, because one of the deer passed.
Oh, I didn't know. That's what I was asking. So when did pass?
The older deer did
Okay.
pass away. I think it was a week before Christmas.
Okay, that's what I was asking. I saw it, I'm like, did we lose one? Closer to the goats.
We've inquired on goats and no one has them available right now at this time of the year, so we'll check again in the spring and be excited to bring goats into the area. So.
All right. Well, then we will move right on to the Committee of the Whole meeting of Tuesday, January 7th of 2025. And could I have a roll call, please?
Finkler is excused. Hammer.
Here.
Lawson.
Here.
Motive.
Present.
Reed.
Here.
Relke is excused. Rostad.
Here.
I acknowledge this meeting was also posted and noticed according to law.
Okay, thank you. In your packet, you do have the committee minutes on file for library of November 19th of 2024.
We need to
and
approve the agenda
Oh, I'm sorry. I always get ahead of myself. Not used to doing this meeting either.
with the change to,
Yes, yes. So I would look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda with the change of moving number 9 after number 3.
So move with the recommendation.
Second.
Okay, motion by Alder Rosted, second by Alder Motif to approve tonight's agenda with moving number 9 to go directly after number 3. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, now move on to number 1, which is the committee minutes on file for library of November 19th of 2024 and PFC of 11/16 of 2024. And also committee report on file for treasurer's report, which is for November of 2024. Any public comment for this meeting tonight? Nope. All right, then we will move on to discussion under new business. And first item would be discussion regarding preliminary resolution for special assessments for Brookside Lane. And we have Jason Letha here for that.
Thank you, Mayor. So this item on the agenda tonight is the resolution that kind of kickstarts the special assessment process for the street reconstruction project that we're working on for 2025. It's a short project. It's tied to some utility replacements as well. And so Paul has put together this resolution. It's kind of our standard resolution. And this essentially, all this does is authorize me as the engineer to prepare the report, the preliminary report, to bring it forth. The report comes with notifications of residents. It has a public hearing associated with it. It's approved preliminarily, and then ultimately the final report is approved, when the project is done and we have all the final totals for the construction project. And so this is just kind of the first step in a long process. Some of you are very familiar with it, others might be kind of new to it. So we just wanted to kind of get that process kick-started here as we're kind of getting the project close to finished up. We're going to be having a public informational meeting coming up, and so we certainly want some direction from the council on this because there's going to be questions at the public informational meeting as well. And so we just want to kind of make sure that we're on board with the resolution and kind of moving that forward. With that being said, we kind of have a standard assessment policy, just so you know, that we kind of always use to assess these projects similarly. But I do want to point out that, and not that we'll get into the policy tonight, but I do want to point out that every project is unique. So there are a few things that we're kind of eyeing on this project already that might be part or not part of that assessment, that might be slightly different. But again, that this doesn't discuss that. This really just authorizes us to get that project going. Certainly, because of the high groundwater down there, we'll probably be looking at some stormwater connections for some pumps. And there is no sidewalk in this part of the city. And there's no sidewalk really close to this. So, it's really kind of up to the council's discretion. But at this point, we're not anticipating on putting it in because it won't connect to anything, and it's on a dead-end street. So that's open to discussion for a different date, but those are the things that'll kind of be part of the resolution approval that gets us started on the special assessment. So any questions on the resolution or the assessment process?
Any questions from anybody? Okay, we're good moving this forward then? Okay, super. Then we will move on to number 9, which is the discussion and direction related to stormwater funding.
I'll recap this, and I know Jason may want to chime in as well. Just going back to our last meeting, we discussed a plan of reviewing either a stormwater fee or going to referendum as part of the 2026 budget process. One of the things that was also discussed was that if we were to enact the fee similar to our garbage collection fee, we would need to repeal Ordinance 782-23, which created Section 102-63, where the utility commissions prohibited from establishing any rates or charging fees for stormwater services until such time as electors approve a referendum. And I know at the last discussion on December 17th that there was the request for that to come back for further discussion at a future meeting. So we put it on this meeting for that future discussion should you want to have that discussion or anything else related to stormwater funding.
Does anybody have anything to say in regards to this? Alder Motif?
I would like to see the fee applied so that we start getting some revenue in and can start moving forward with the capital plans and stormwater remediation, which means also repealing the ordinance.
Alder Lawson?
Yeah, I think it's important to start collecting a fee so that we can have a dedicated source for stormwater, especially with all the facility type changes that we may need over the next several years. I think some of those projects will be some of the first to get money taken from, and we can't really afford to keep kicking that can down the road. Has there been a review of the rest of the stormwater ordinance to see what other changes might need to be made, or is that still a future meeting discussion?
I'm doing that as we speak, as a matter of fact. There are a couple references within Chapter 104 that refer to Columbus Water and Light as the collection agency and the body responsible for sending out the bills. With the changes within the city structure, since this was approved in 2022, we may want to revisit that. There is also a reference in Chapter 104 that provides that any amendments to Chapter 104 has to be done by 5 members of the Common Council's affirmative vote. So that's even more than a supermajority. That's one of those provisions that was put in late into this ordinance creation to try to get it passed, because some of the opponents of the ordinance didn't want the council to come in and willy-nilly change things depending on who the members of the council would be from time to time, so.
You don't have to be tactful, it was me.
Well, I'm also going to ask,
I'm just talking.
as part of that, I think, Paul, you need to look into, last year, the state passed a law at the state level that said local councils can't enact supermajority provisions, and so is that, as it's written in our ordinances, not legal for us to require? So it's one of these changes that we've just started to talk about that were part of last year's legislative session at the state, and there's probably other cleanup we need to do around that issue, not just strictly this one, but looking at our other ordinances as well.
It would be, and again, at the risk of, I'm gonna talk this way, at the risk of irritating Alder Motive further, this ordinance was put together in a very strange manner, and it would be a good idea for this council, when we start actually wanting to move forward with this, it would be a good idea for each of you to just it's a short chapter, so take a quick read and make sure everybody understands what we're really doing here. Because as I was just reading through this again, there was 3 or 4 things that were thrown in last minute for appeasement purposes that may or may not be appropriate. So depending on how you feel.
Alder Reed?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm also interested in repealing ordinance 782-23, or at least the 102-63 part. I definitely need to reread it because it's been quite a while. Just having questions, wondering if we'll be looking at a small flat rate for residents. Would we be looking at something that's a little bit more of a use-based for commercial? I'm just wanting to look ahead and what kind of direction we'd probably take for the new utility.
Okay. And there was also some discussion last month too regarding whether we want to just have it as a fee on the property tax versus having the utility collect that fee. So
I strongly support that.
And I think that was kind of the overwhelming feel that I got from that meeting too. Any other discussion on this? I mean, obviously, continue to move forward with public information meetings also, just to, keep the public clued in as to what we're wanting to do, so. So it's not really something that we're moving forward for next meeting. We're just gathering information to move forward with the process, so.
So what is the next step if we're not going to move it forward to the next meeting?
I would say that at a future committee of the whole, we're going to have the stormwater ordinance review, as well as a discussion on the process of repealing 782-23, 102-63. Whether at that meeting or a separate meeting, we need to discuss the rate structure and define how the fee would be collected as well.
Right.
And some of this is work we can do to set the stage for the budget process. Others maybe make more sense to be discussed as part of that budget process, so that we're looking at things holistically as we review the budget.
Any further discussion for direction? Have we given you enough information of what we need to accomplish?
I've got
and
a
our
list.
homework needs to be to read over that ordinance.
Chapter 104 for everybody's information.
My question is, Jason, do you have any further questions, comments?
Yeah, I think certainly looking at that chapter, because the initial intent of what was being discussed in the ordinance was created around is different than what we're proposing now. So there could be substance in there that needs to be reviewed and updated or amended appropriately. I don't believe the fee calculation methodology would change. And we obviously had gotten to the point previously where we have basically the information or all the calculations, I think, done. It is probably worth revisiting and discussing that. But again, the methodology is used across all stormwater utilities, and it's defensible because it's been challenged in court and things like that. So I feel comfortable with where we're at. But I would want to make sure that everybody understood what that is and how we arrived at it. And there are a few things that come out of the fee calculation that get complex that I think we'd have to address. So one of the things is, if I remember right, there's a few parcels in the city that just get absorbently high compared to other parcels just because of the way they are. And I think at one point there was a discussion about somewhat limiting how high some of those parcels could get, because you could have a very small parcel paying a very high fee comparative, to other parcels. And so again, there's some of that stuff I think that we do have to still kind of work through and figure out how we arrive at that. The calculation is fine in my opinion, but how we arrive at how to set the rate. So it's, again, and I think not that it's going to necessarily be fair, but it has to be equitable in a way that we can defend it, and there's a benefit, right? So the more impervious and the more stormwater you have leaving your site, the more you pay. But it also has to work across, I think, most cases. So I do think there's some homework there that the methodology's there. I think if we're ready to start talking numbers, which might come at a later date, I would definitely want to bring that back up and spend a little time in that calculation structure and talk about some of those things with you guys to make sure that we're making good decisions and, we're treating everybody fair. I mean, that's the point here is we want it to apply to those people creating it, but we also want it to be fair if it's going to be sustainable. So that's all I had.
Okay. Anything further? All right. Then we will move on to item, item number 4, which is discussion of the Beautification Committee's proposed mural at 125 North Dickinson Boulevard. And we have Sherry Culhane here from the Beautification Committee. So you want to push her mic? No.
Go.
There we go.
Is that good? So the Beautification Committee has done a couple of projects around town, and we're hoping to get some more things done. This is the photograph, or the actual painting of the mural that we would like to put on the community center wall facing the city or the city hall, that courtyard there. Actually, someone made nice copies for me if you want to hand those around if you want to look at them. I just think the picture itself is much nicer than the copies, the reason I brought it tonight. So I think all of you have a copy of this document. It's something I put together to kind of explain what our plan is. So myself and Laura Weichert actually came up with the design, and we have a group of at least 4 local artists that are willing to volunteer their time and expertise to actually do the mural. We're planning on doing it this spring when weather permits, to start spring and summer. And our idea was to try and coordinate this with Redbud Days so that we could maybe have the mural, the wall prep and everything done, and the mural on the wall around Redbud Days so that we could maybe start painting so people could walk by and look and see what we're doing. People can see it taking place, the actual mural taking place, and I think it'll be a real good incentive for people to get excited about and involved in this. The timeline for completion, we're putting at 3 to 4 weeks because we have to work around work schedules, the four of us, I'm the only one that's retired, but everybody else is working, so we'll have to work around their work times. The cost of the paint and supplies will be provided by the beautification committee. These are just estimates for supplies. We're not sure how much it's going to cost. We still have to get the wall prepped. That we'll have to do a power washing of the wall and put primer on the wall before we can actually paint. Exterior primer is what we will use, which is just like exterior house paint. It's the preferred type of paint to use for murals. After the mural has been dried sufficiently, we will put a clear coat on it, which will help protect it from UV light, weather, and also if there happens to be any vandalism. It will be easier to remove anything. I don't see that as being a problem, but if it is, it'll be easier to remove. The mural should last at least 10 to 15 years, depending on who you ask. I will keep track of what paint colors and what types are used so that we can, if any repair needs to be done, we can take care of that ourselves. And there is no need for any sort of upkeep from the city or any kind of maintenance or anything of the mural. So we're basically asking for approval because it's a public building, and I just think that that is a perfect spot for this type of a mural. It's a garden area. I think it will spruce things up, and I really think that we can make that space a really nice green space for everybody to enjoy. So, anybody have any questions?
Alder Motive?
I just want to say thank you.
Oh, you're
The
welcome.
beautification committee has come a long way in how you're presenting things to the council, and all the questions were answered ahead of time in this document, and that's just really, really helpful. And I like that you took the time to plan it around Red Bud Days. There was a lot of time put into this, and thank you.
You're welcome.
Alder Rustin?
Did you plan on doing the power washing, or did you want DPW?
Well, I hadn't really thought that far, honestly. It would be great if DPW could do the power washing for us. If not, then we were going to actually have look for a quote to see if someone like Robert's Painting or somebody could give us a quote to prepare the wall, to power wash it. It looks like there's probably some mortar and stuff that's kind of loose in between that needs to be either scraped. I think the power washing will take care of it, honestly. But if DPW could help us with power washing and maybe putting the primer on, that would be great. But if not, we'll just have to get a quote to see if someone else can do that.
There's three things on my list for the city to work on regarding this project, and I want to share, I'm fully supportive. I think this is a great addition. One of is the power washing. Two is the potential rental of a scissor lift. There was talk of scaffolding, and I don't like the idea of scaffolding from a attractive nuisance standpoint. So having a lift that is more secure and safe for not only the attractive nuisance issue, but also for our volunteers. And then third is volunteer waiver of liability and making sure that from a risk management standpoint, we've taken care of any concern on that end. So
Well, that was my issue with the power washing. I don't want the beautification committee to do the power washing and cause damage to the building and be liable to the building.
Yeah.
Right. And again, if we would have gotten a quote from Roberts to see if they could do it, or if DPW would like to do it, that would be great. As far as the insurance waiver, I was not at the beautification committee last night, so but I have since learned of Matt's concern. I did contact the other artist, and they're all willing to sign waivers as far as for insurance purposes, if that works for everybody. So.
we've got to just work through it on the insurance and legality side. We'll find a resolution and we'll get it taken care of. So,
Alder Reed?
Oh, I just wanted to also say thank you. It's obvious so much thought and care has gone into the planning of this project. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Excited about it.
All right.
So,
Thank
good moving this forward then.
All right.
Good. Thank you, Sherry. All right, then on to item number 5, which is discussion regarding the facade grant application for 139 North Ludington Street, and we have Mike Corman here to discuss that.
Yes, the application before you, is for, the North Ludington, Street, property. This property owner owns, 2 different parcels, possibly 3 right next to each other on that part of Ludington. This is an after-the-fact application. The project is already complete. CDA reviewed this, and while they wanted to, are strongly in favor of following the procedures and approving these applications prior to the project starting, this applicant has other properties on that part of Ludington, and currently has another facade grant application that is following the procedure and will go to CDA at their next meeting. That is for 135 Ludington. The discussion on CDA is that what recommendation was to approve the facade renovation at 50% of the program guidelines, which would be $1,103.75. The idea at the CDA was to still encourage, reduce the amount that would be awarded, but still encourage that person to continue to invest in downtown.
Any questions for, okay, Alder Rustin?
That number you just rattled off, the 1900, you say, or 1,000?
$1,103.75.
So they want to.
He's requesting $2,207.50 for the work that was done, and CDA recommended 50% of that.
Was that in full? The recommended 50% was the whole CDA in favor, or was there opposition?
There was opposition.
It was a split vote.
Yeah.
There was opposition, and I was not there due to illness. Had I been there, I would have opposed it as well.
I guess we probably noticed as today, I love policies, but we have to follow the policy. Otherwise, there's no purpose of a policy. I don't like going against CDA or any board because they're all volunteers. But if there's a policy, we need to follow it, or we can get rid of all of them. So we're not doing ourselves any favors by handing out stuff that's in violation of policies.
Alder Reed, sorry.
Oh, thank you. I guess I could truly go either way on this. I'm a little concerned that he didn't do his paperwork ahead of time. But if it's through the CDA and their decision to reimburse would be approximately 25 or 30% of his costs, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I really do want to encourage the beautification of downtown, and this is something so small that looks a lot better.
How long has our facade grant been in place?
I don't have that level of institutional knowledge.
Okay. It's been a while. It's been a while. All right.
And it was way before I started 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
The fact that it's been in place for as long as what it has, I mean, I almost have, I gotta agree with all the rest of it. If we got a policy, if we're not gonna follow the policy, then you might as well throw it out. And
I feel like it's been around for at least 6 years. And I'm wondering if this owner had come forward previously a couple years back. I mean, I don't think he had filled anything out, but I do feel like he had made a verbal request a couple of years ago.
There was again, this is being newer, don't have the institutional knowledge. There was references to a previous request. I could not find any documentation of that previous request.
Alder Lawson.
Yeah, my understanding was that the owner asked for information related to the grant earlier in the year before construction had started, so he was aware of the policy, but didn't submit the request prior to starting work. So I agree, we should approve it. I think it's great if he's got other property that he is going to follow the process on, because we do have funds in the budget, this year, and we'd love to see more improvement downtown.
Alder Rustic.
Just so I'm clear, and so the public is also clear, what I'm hearing is the CDA was a split vote, correct? 50-50. It wasn't more in favor than not?
It was split vote in favor of coming forward with this recommendation.
But not, as you said, not unanimous.
Which is why it's here at council.
Correct, because if it was unanimous at CDA, we would never saw it.
Right. And we were also, like I said, I was out, and I believe there was one other CDA member out, so it really wasn't a full discussion.
Did anyone, I don't like to backtrack, but did anybody contact the owner to see why he had delayed handing in his paperwork? Was there a family emergency? Did something happen to that effect?
No.
We didn't contact, or?
No, I've been in conversation with this gentleman since last spring.
Okay.
Well, from what I'm hearing is that this is a dead issue. So we will not be approving the facade grant for this building. So. Is it just dead here, or do we have to?
Well, I was going through that in my head, and I think you have two options. And I mean, the purpose of this conversation is to decide to move it forward to the council in the first place. And if you decide not to, it's going to be dead there. And your other option is to move it forward and then vote it down.
I vote not to move it forward.
Michael?
I'm good either way.
Trina?
I'm also all right either way. Hearing that we have had more contact than I thought, it does change my feelings.
Yeah. Well, I would think if either way, then let's not even bother moving it forward for a vote. I mean, it sounds like everybody is good with just killing it right here. So, yes?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Then we will move on to item number 6, which is discussion of the City of Columbus Purchasing Policy and Procedures Update.
Well, Crystal comes up to the table here. We've been having this on the list for the majority of 2024 and had time to kind of get this on the front plate, I guess, so to speak. Crystal's primary focus as we revised this was to bring it in accordance with state statute and what the state determines are the levels of approval. So I'll let Crystal discuss and answer any questions.
Well, one of the things I do want to point out is that I have paragraph B1. I have a whole sentence in the wrong place. So knowing that we're at draft stage, I wanted to explain what I was trying to do with the edits. And if you look at paragraph 1, this is where we start to talk about authorization levels, who can authorize at what dollar amount, up to what dollar amount. If you jump for a moment back to the next page, which is section E, that's where we start discussing the actual purchasing procedures in even more depth. So these two paragraphs, these two areas to me should match. And I ran with this right when I got back from Christmas vacation, and I had like 3 hours to do like 10 to 100 things. So my apologies for paragraph B1 being miswritten. But if you look at it with me, what I'm trying to do here is set our lowest branch or dollar group of authorizations at 5,000 and below. So currently our policy is 1,500. You can pretty much take half of our bills and above. It's always that $1,500 is so low. I don't know of any municipality that's had it that low. This has been low for a really long time. And when we were before we went to My Viewpoint, this meant that every transaction had to be put in a purchase order. And then Allie had to take and replicate it and enter it herself as an invoice. So all the departments were putting in purchase orders for everything. That's not the same as just putting in an invoice. A purchase order is when you want to identify something before it happens and you want to get some pre-approvals in place. That's the process you would want to use. So when we went to My Viewpoint and I trained everyone in there, you have the two different areas where a department or whoever they have working in their department puts the invoices in. You would want to start with a purchase order. So we're trying to get that purchase order process more limited to things that require special approvals, not just your everyday invoices and all of that. So going to My Viewpoint, we started using invoices for a lot more and getting the duplication off of Ally. And during the year, after everyone started learning how to use it, we were supposed to be using the purchase orders more. And as the year went on, it was identified, okay, if we match these things to the approval levels, then we can do the purchase orders this way. So my attempt here is to match what procedurally we've been doing and want to continue doing with the policy. And that's differentiating between a purchase order and what's just a regular purchase. And what requires that extra step, which would create, you would be creating a purchase order. So anything 5,000 and below is our first tier of the approval process. Then you go from 5 to 25,000. So 25,000 is what is matching with state policy. I'm looking at state policy on their construction process, the process for bidding requirements and so forth. So we're using the 5,000 and 25,000 levels to do our steps. Currently, if you look at E2, I've got anything over 25,000 goes to council. That can be adjusted if you want the representation to be authorized through the accounts payable process. Everything over 1,500, whether it needed a PO or not, still hits my desk. The ones that required actual approvals, I forward to Matt. He's the administrator. So we've finally got people using the purchase order process, and now anything over the 1,500 goes to Matt's desk for prior approval. So those things are getting worked on so that directors, I can stop, catching the invoices every day and shipping them over there, and we get things running a little more efficiently, and it's been working. So my attempt on paragraph 1, on B1 again, was to mirror the purchasing procedures as outlined in section E. So where we start out with the department head may authorize purchases that do not exceed 5,000. That word except that purchase shall meet the bidding requirements, that was really anything from 5 to 25. So that sentence is misplaced. So what we ideally want to see is that the budgeting process is outlining what we want to purchase next year, what types of expenses we're going to have, and the budget rules. That's the way I've always handled things in offices, is the budget rules. So when we have things that fit in the budget, we've already authorized it in the budget, they easily go through purchasing, they go through the policy, they match the policy, they go through purchasing, they're approved, everything's smooth. Where you run into the exceptions are where you've now identified something that's completely different from your budget, but maybe you have some revenues coming in addition, and you want to get it authorized. But you don't want to go to council for a budget amendment, right? For every line item, it's a little bit different. So the purchasing policy should be able to capture that and let it be seamless. If the department head is watching their budget, they have several accounts they're looking at, they can look at their accounts and know, okay, I'm still good for my budget. Matt, I need this authorized. I'm going to put in a purchase order. I'm going to put a note in there saying this wasn't in my budget and we have enough revenue. I'm staying under budget. I'm good to go. Please authorize. He authorizes it. The information's there. Matt has an opportunity to look at the department head's accounts right there in the process. It's made it a little bit easier. What we do want to make sure is that the levels are comfortable for you as a council, that everything over a certain level is going to come to you for approval. If we have something in the budget and it's over a certain amount, right now, 25,000, even though it's in the budget, you're still going to get it authorized through you. And this would be, for example, the truck. It would still come to you. That's over $25,000. When we talk about the bidding process for the, what do you call it? Not the paint job, the extra stuff that goes on the fire truck. That would be an amount that Matt should catch and say, where's your 3 bids? Let's kick it back to Scott and say, okay, you can submit this purchase order again when you've got some 3 bids, or explain to me why not. And that would be documented in the purchase order process. So that's where we would like to capture things that can be handled through that process and not every little thing come to council. So the idea here is I need to understand from you where you feel comfortable. You've always had over, is it 15? Over 15. So the basic number I'm changing here is the 5,000 from 1,500 for a department head. And I'd like to change the 15,000 to 25,000 for coming to council. So between now and the next time we meet, I will get the wording right on paragraph 1, on E1, or B1. So with that explained, I know I just said a lot.
Alder Lawson?
Okay, so department heads have spending authority up to $5,000, and they're allowed to delegate that authority, right?
No, they do not delegate the authority for that they have to approve anything that their department head, as the department head.
I read that. I interpret it the same way Mike's.
Yeah, I've read
reading
it somewhere. Said they could delegate.
They can delegate it, putting in, but they still have to retain the responsibility.
Well, yeah.
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 Yeah, and that's only because we have people in departments that are entering the invoices. The department head has to approve it before it even gets into the accounting office. I don't even see
but
it.
they literally don't have to be present to make a purchase, right? They can have someone else make that purchase.
If they've handed their
authorized it.
credit card to someone.
Yeah, okay.
That would-
So that's the up to 5,000, right? And then
Yeah, the department head is still responsible.
city administrator can approve up to 25,000.
Right, and I've got the 15 crossed off, and that should have just been a change over to 25. Right.
And then over 25 comes to city council, and anything that's not budgeted, right? If it requires a budget amendment, then it comes
If
to
it
city
required a
council.
budget amendment, it would be coming to you. If it's an unbudgeted item and it falls within the dollar amounts, it might not come to you. It was $3,000, it was $7,000, and
It's up to the
the
department head to
department head
manage.
shows us how he's gonna handle that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not buying this, we're buying this instead.
Yeah,
But you're within your budget, because the departments have been, for the last few years, working with us on, here's my budget, but it's this. It's not each one of these, it's my picture with all my accounts together. And that's the budget line item policy, explains that.
what's the amount then that requires competitive bidding?
I believe it was 5 to 15 for, trying to remember the name of the bid, and over 25 for the competitive bidding.
Over 25 is state statute for construction-related activity, that it has to be publicly bid, and that's different than getting quotes.
Right.
That's just construction though, correct?
Just construction.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we wrote in, it's number E23, that the department head shall secure at least 3 written quotes or proposals. And that's for purchases between 5 and 25.
What number was that?
It's
Three.
E, number 3, E, purchasing procedures, and number 3. That's what I say, you kind of got to look at that first couple of paragraphs, and it should mirror what's back here in E too. That's where I made the mistake.
I think all the changes to the amounts make sense to me, considering how much inflation has happened over the past couple of years. I also like that you're changing the term that can be approved by a city administrator for minor contracts up to 3 years. That makes sense, because that can lock us in.
We've seen that this year come up, so.
That was
a-
my question, if I can tag on to that. So I just want to clarify, what that's saying is no contract can be signed that is longer than 3 years? So you're actually
would-
increasing it.
To 3 years. from
Why? May I
2.
ask why?
There's just a few out there that require 3 years. It doesn't have to be. I was using other municipalities and other resources as I constructed the changes.
It's a minor change, and it's
Right.
definitely nothing worth holding up, but I didn't hear anything on it. And so I was just curious if there was something specific that was triggering it.
Did we have any of them that we signed this year that were 3? We tried to keep it to 2.
Only one submitted. If it, the contracts,
We
we're
were
talking
trying to
like,
keep it and make sure they were only to 2 years.
the only one that submitted a 2-year price was the lawn mowing company.
And if you wanted to lock something in for 3 years, you're probably better off locking something for 3 years if you can get that price for 3 years these days. They're hard to get. And the only other source I had was I pulled about 5 different municipalities' purchasing policies.
Alderossi, did you have
So yeah,
something?
just to clarify, the number 9, the contracts, that was the plumbing, the electrical. That's what we're referring to there, correct?
Yeah.
The minor contracts.
Routine contract service agreements. I believe I was contemplating, I probably, I don't know if it was some of the ITs, like if we could secure 365 Office for 3 years, or, software for 3 years.
And then, when you brought up the truck purchase, the only reason that came to us is because was approved in the capital improvement, correct? Had that been a budgeted item for 25, and he was,
It exceeded the budget that was set, and I believe it was more comfortable bringing it to council.
correct, but I mean, I'm saying if it was a budgeted item, not capital improvement, we would never see it, correct?
It was
No.
under 25.
It
under
was-
25.
It's over 25.
So what's the purpose of that if it's a budgeted item and they,
Well,
in
that's
there?
my,
I
that's
mean-
a question for you also, and it's good you're bringing that up. I
Because
do
if
know
it's
capital approved during the budget.
Correct.
Did not go back to council during the year.
Say that again?
There was a change in several, not here.
Oh.
But in several municipalities that I've been in communication with and that I've worked for, their policy was if it was in the budget and approved at budget season, if you had the quotes.
Correct.
So if you had the quotes during the budget season and it was approved, you didn't go back to council. But not all of ours, we have the formal quotes in place when we did the budget. You had a comment?
I would just add, like, in other communities I've been, and again, the last Middleton, for all intents and purposes, there was a vehicle equipment replacement plan. Once that was approved, they sent purchase orders the first working day in January and purchased all the vehicles that day. And it was done. It didn't come back. But again, they bought everything off state contract, like most municipalities do when it comes to vehicles.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If it's approved in the budget, we have to rely on the department head to follow the policy and have the 3 quotes or whatever we decide to line out. But if it's approved in the budget,
And they
we-
go and get their 3 quotes a month later, then what would you like?
as long as they have a money in that line item, I don't see why. I think we should. I don't know how you change that from the 25,000. How do you word it? That if it's budgeted,
Yeah, I contemplated that. It's not written in here that way. I tried, but it didn't get all out. But
I
that,
would support that too,
If
Ryan.
you support that, I can figure out how to get it worded so that when they're budgeted, they're approved during the budget process.
yes.
I think you still gotta be a limit.
But if it's in there, I get it, but I don't get it.
It's a
because
$300,000 fire truck. I mean, are there cases where you go, yeah, I'd want to see that anyways?
But that's a bad example because
I kind of like the fire truck, the little one.
well, like a fire truck, we're not.
We'll pick on Scott.
Yeah, so Scott's not to pick on Scott, but he's not
No.
going to have like $300,000 just sitting there to go buy a brand new pumper truck. I mean, I could see like maybe DPW and a plow truck see like $200,000 maybe at that point, but I don't know. It's just, I mean, we have to trust them as well, and it's their budget. When they're out of money, they got to come to us and ask us for more money.
Yeah,
Well,
I
let me
think
look
there's,
at wording, because I want to be able to have the exceptions would go to council. So I don't want to say, okay, everything, if it's in your budget, you get it, and that's it, boom. But we still have the process of, do you have your quotes? Did you get your purchase order in? Where's the quotes? I want to see your stuff. Then we approve it. So
But
that would
could all
still
be on-
happen.
Correct, but that'd be on the backside that
Yeah.
we don't see
Yeah,
it.
that would happen after the fact. I just want to make sure if I build that in here, there's not a place where it triggers and says, okay, this is really an exception and it needs to go to council. I don't want to eliminate something. I don't want to eliminate everything if there really needs to be an exception. So I just need to think through that possibility of the exception and see if
Oh,
it would fit in.
Thank
Well,
you.
Alder Reed.
Thank you. Whereas I would be going the opposite route, and I would prefer to keep the hard $25,000 limit, just so that both we and the public can see the large items going through. I would be comfortable not having it come back if it was something that had already had their quotes done, but not purchased at the time of budget. But that would be more the exception written in instead of completely getting rid of a limit and then going, oh, but there's some exceptions. So that's just kind of the direction I would like to go.
Alder Motive?
I agree, we need to keep the limit in, that's good, but I do think that we could create an efficiency so that if the quotes were made and it's approved in a budget, it was specifically pointed out to the council when they approved the budget, and it comes in at or under budget, it shouldn't have to be approved again.
By council.
I think that, yeah, by council, I'm sorry. I think that there's probably some examples out there, Crystal.
No, that's how I handled it in Fox Lake, and I got it written into the policy that
Okay.
way.
I was going to say, you're really good
Yep.
at finding that
I already had
information,
it.
so maybe you could bring a draft for people to look
Okay.
at.
Yeah, that was the procedure that we didn't always have time for, but if a department had all their quotes in place and everything, it was pre-approved during the budget, it was fine. It was the things that hadn't been quoted out and taken to council specifically that still had to go to council.
Yes, that is the direction I would like to go.
But then we will, you'll have
I'll
the.
just make the changes
The
and
changes, and
bring
then
it to
we're good
you.
with moving this forward with her presenting the final changes? Yes? Okay, very good. Then on to disposal of assets policy.
Oh, did all of you get the new copy
Oh,
from
okay.
today?
Yes.
Okay, because that's the one I'm going to go off of.
She was stepping out, I don't know.
Do we continue or are we waiting?
When, okay, let's just take a few minutes. No, that's fine. Okay, disposal policy.
Well, I'll just keep going for a minute. So the first idea that I looked at trying to come up with what changes we might need for the disposal of asset policy, it's everything was supposed to be up to the council. And realistically, there's a lot of that that's really unnecessary. So we have a fund that purchases an item. When that item gets sold, you handle it how, but it stays in the fund unless there's an exception and it's going to get transferred to another fund. So those are general principles that most municipalities follow, and we've been following that here. So what we tried to do is decrease that weight on the council, that these simple procedures, when they're in the fund and we're disposing of them, or we're, transferring them between departments, that's just easy. Let's just handle it at the administrative level. Where we get into a little more in depth with approval processes and who can do what is where we came up with, we have new wording in here for the police department working with their federal Department of Defense in the program that they have joined last year. So with that, in light of that, then we had to take a look at our disposal process. And normally you don't see an asset go to somewhere else. It normally stays where it was. So it either gets sold in the general fund, it gets sold from capital projects, wherever we purchased it. That's where the sale proceeds would come back to. The city's held things so long, we don't have a huge dollar amount that ever came back in disposal of assets. But as we move forward, we're trying to get away from that and do things more cyclically so that we're not wearing something to death and we're utilizing our capital program better, we're turning them over quicker, and keeping within the capital facilities planning. And that's in your annual budget process. You're going to know about what you're going to get on disposal. We have the fire truck that needs to be disposed of. That, to me, normally, it just makes sense to offset the cost of the new item. So when you're replacing an item, it's really easy to just look at the old one. Anything that you sell it for goes towards the new one, right? It just makes sense. And that's what we'd like to follow. And then when you have assets that are being sold and you're not replacing it, that to me bears the question, now what do you do? What do you do with the proceeds? So is that department just going to keep it? Does it just go into our general fund? Does it go into capital projects fund? Historically, what you've done here is you've just kept it in the capital projects fund, and you noted it for what it was. So I just gave you a summary of my review of the history here, how things are kind of being handled. So when we wanted to implement the police department's program, we need to come up with a way to keep the items that they purchase identified, the sale proceeds identified, and what they're going to use those proceeds for identified, but it's just the police departments. So if you followed the old policy, it didn't really fit. Every little thing they sold, if it was $300 or if it was $10,000 or if it was $40,000, every little thing had to come to council. So we're trying to eliminate that and have some procedures in place so things are handled logically and the departments can feel responsible for their items and what they can use it for. So that's my ideas in making the changes here. And we would like to, I know there's basic accounting I can do for the capital projects fund to set up the police department's account. So if they are selling items that they were able to hold for a year, they're able to sell them, retain the funds, and go towards their next vehicle purchase, so to speak, then those can be identified, and you would use an asset account if you're going to carry it from year to year. The other idea is that we can set up a specific fund. We're not ready to do a full vehicle citywide replacement fund. We would set that up in a separate fund, like we have the special revenue fund for the parks, where we've been collecting donations for several years and then you're going to spend them. That is in a separate fund. So right now, if we could set the police department up with their own fund, it's another fund number, or we can keep them like I do with all the designated item funds that we have the one separate bank account for where I track that. I have it segregated out into whose is what in that fund. So capital projects is where we would probably need to keep this right now, is in the capital projects fund for the police department, and then we would track it. So what you've got here is the paragraphs that we've added to describe their ability to do this. Then I would need to come up with the accounting for it to monitor it. And then the changes from everything coming to city council to going through basically the same thing we do like of our purchasing policy, things would go through the administrator. So your questions and thoughts?
Michael, you were first.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure for departments like the police and fire department, that wherever those funds end up going, that they can use them for related expenses like upfitting. It may not be the purchase of a vehicle, but it's equipment for the vehicle. Is that going to be a problem?
No, right now, the only one we're contemplating that is going to be separate is the police department. So,
right, so whatever,
that,
however you set it up, that fund, wherever that money is that from a sale of vehicle, right, those proceeds go in that fund.
Right.
They will be able to use those funds to not only purchase a vehicle, but also upfit it, correct?
Oh, okay, I wasn't quite getting the point, but,
The upfitting is going to be likely, hopefully, under $25,000, which would allow the administrator to approve the upfitting.
Yeah, I just want to make sure
Yeah.
it can be spent out of that same fund, right?
right.
Okay.
So if you're selling the item and, you're purchasing the new vehicle, you're gonna upfit a new vehicle, it's just logical that that money that you're using as your trade-in is the same thing, or you sold it, you have a disposal of an asset, whether you traded it in or you sold it. If it's a new vehicle, it would be following the same logical process, that goes towards the new vehicle. And it's part of your capital plan. So though, what you're talking about seems to me like that's still part of our capital budgeting, capital process, capital planning. So here, what we're talking about for police department specifically is tagging them into a specifically separate account and letting them be used in the future so that they're isolated.
I just want to make sure that when they use it in the future, they can use it not only to purchase a vehicle, but to also upfit a vehicle.
Oh,
It
right.
says, it says can be specifically towards the purchase of additional vehicles or equipment for the police department.
Yeah, I thought we
Right,
covered it
awesome.
with the or equipment. Sorry.
Alder Moto.
Okay.
I don't think that it needs to be any more than your general designated fund. I don't think you need a separate bank account, restricted.
No, I didn't want a separate bank account.
Yeah.
It would just, they would have their own asset account in that
Yeah.
fund.
Yeah, I think that's fine, and it can just be in with the designated funds. I think you've done a good job of vetting the policy and making the changes, and frankly, I may steal some of it for some changes we're making at my company.
Alder Rassett?
I guess, what does Chief think about the new policy that affects the PD?
I got a role in writing some of the amendments, especially in the part with our, the assets we get from the government program, the LESO law enforcement support office, I believe. And I'm fine with it. That's exactly what our goal was. The lieutenant work came in front of the council months ago. That was exactly what we proposed is when either the year has elapsed since we got an item or a year or more and we're done using an item, that when we sell it, auction it, however we get rid of it, that we're able to use that money specifically directed for police department vehicles or equipment. And this policy reflects that. I've reviewed it.
Because this is to reflect Darrell Ward, Lieutenant Ward's wish of a take-home squad program down the road, correct? That's what it's about.
Eventually, yes, but it'll be years before
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, this starts the funds to be able to set those aside and continue to setting them aside.
And the only other,
The government reality could change this program like that and then never done the line.
disappear, okay.
For now, we're gonna use it to our advantage and it's very helpful.
And I think the only other question I have or comment is why city council is in here so much and not the administrator is due to, we couldn't keep an administrator. So everything had to come to council because the administrator role flipped so much that the way they wrote it, it could flip so many times and how
Well, Matt,
fast
you're
the
stuck.
switch.
You're in the policy. See that?
You should put his name.
But no, I think it's good and I think we're in the right direction.
Yeah. Anything further? All right. Good moving this forward then? All right, very good. And next would be discussion of the 2025 fee schedule.
So what you have in front of you is my first draft. I'm in the middle of draft 2 that I'm almost done, but I have questions. So I was not able to get any more edits in here for you than are already in here today. I just wanted to walk through a couple areas for you. I did reorganize the flow of which department order it was in, because I kept not finding things quickly, and I'm like, this isn't matching my brain thoughts. So I did move things around a little bit from the old one. So if you see the old one online, it's just sections that got moved. It wasn't anything else. Then the sections getting moved. So on page 1, page 2.
Well, your page 1 and 2 is going to be
Oh, I'm
different than
sorry.
ours. So.
I have them here 47, 48. You can skip 48, skip 49. Yeah, I see your.
Oh, okay.
Okay, page 50. That's the old one. Yep, it's in your packet as page 50. All right, this is where we added a section for the cable commission to be able to rent their equipment. Let's see if I wanted to tell you anything before. There are some edits I've made subsequent to this one. I'll just describe a little bit since they're not in here for you. All right, we can keep going. Department of Public Works, those are all good. We just had one, the dumpster permit went up a little bit. That's on page 51.
Kind of a small thing with the dumpster permit, but
Yeah.
there's that extra 0 in there. It's 50.000. And
Oh.
So,
Got happy on
because
those
when I
zeros.
first looked at that and with my eyesight the way it is,
Did it look like
50 grand. Yeah,
50,000?
that's.
Duly noted, thank you. Okay, get down to the athletic fields. All right, so if you'll go to page 54, the edits are not in here. I do have them now from Amy Jo, the Parks Facility Shelter area. So watch for this when it comes. This is an area that I had her understand. I thought I understood what she needed changed, but as I tried to make the edits, it didn't make sense. So basically, the biggest change that is going to be proposed here is the nonprofit, non-resident area. So instead of those being so low, those are actually going up, so that they're matching to approximately 75% of the non-resident fee, which is the $2,500. So those are going to change. If on some of the other shelters, there's just going to be some minor changes coming up. You don't have them in there yet. Okay, parks, facilities, I'm on page 56. Then, like I said, right through the parks area, there might be a couple of minor changes coming to you with the next draft. Aquatic Center, I did get their changes this morning. It's not reflected in here, just some minor changes you're going to find in there if you want to make note to watch for those. And I'll have them highlighted still just like that, where they're highlighted in red if I've changed something. So
Before we
Aquatic
leave-
Center is going to have a few. Go ahead.
Before we get too far from the parks,
Okay.
one of the things we want a little bit of feedback from you on before we bring this back in a final format in 2 weeks is we currently have a rental fee of $50 for a park. And should events that close down an entire park pay more of a fee than $50 when
It's 1,500.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, what are you reading?
I'm reading my notes from Amy Jo, and I'm doing a poor job of it. Clearly.
Did I type $15?
You type 50.
Oh, they were both bad.
No, that's you.
So I guess
She's
I'd
clarified it in
invite
there.
Amy Jo to clarify here what we want to ask for.
More money than 50. Okay.
What page is that on?
The changes aren't in here yet. She's got them to me today, and we're working on getting them in here for you. What's that?
56?
We're still on 54, 55 area, page 54 and 55.
Fireman's Park rental for the entire park is currently at $1,500.
Let's see, hold on, let's point out the right one. Fireman's Park, the whole one is, oh, okay, yep. You're 56 at the very
right.
end of, right before Aquatic Center starts, the entire park. Okay, 1,500 is last year's rate.
Correct.
Okay,
So we have more situations coming up. For example, the Oddfellows ran a fantastic event last year for their Food Truck Fest. And through their rental, and to no fault of theirs, it just became very popular. They'd rented the Franklin Shelter, the Parkview Shelter, and then the beer concession stand for $180. We didn't have a wedding that weekend, but if we had a wedding that weekend, there would have been nowhere for their guests to park because the park was just so full. So we're having discussions of, do we have a separate rental fee for renting the entire park? And I've met with the Oddfellows and we're having that discussion. This is no secret to them. And we also have an event in July, another large group that wants to rent just the open shelters, but I think it's going to bring in a lot of people, which may affect, again, a pavilion rental. So we're trying to come up with the situation. Do we have the $1,500, which is really set in place when the 4th of July started, renting the entire park? So how do you compare apples to apples to a lesser event that's a one-day rental versus a week rental? Does that make sense?
What is it to rent just the pavilion if like a wedding is excluded, you know, what would?
For a resident rate, it is $2,000 for the entire day, and a non-resident's $2,500.
So you could potentially lose $2,500 because somebody wouldn't want to do their wedding at that same time.
Correct. But we could also rent the pavilion, but how do you close off parking
Right.
for this event versus the wedding? So that's where I'm kind of stuck, and I kind of told Matt, you know, it's at $50. What do we do now? So I'm sorry.
I think you should tack that amount that you could potentially lose onto what the fee would be for an event like that, so that you're whole. Does that make sense?
It does, but then it's kind of pickled in with, you know, you have one group doing it for a week, which I get, to me, I look at that as that's the city's donation to the 4th of July, helping by reducing their rates, right? And they give back to a lot of organizations and then other groups too that are coming in. I don't know a solution, and I don't want to be the one to make it, so.
Well, and the challenge, and I've spent some time over the years discussing this, and if we could avoid the word special event policy, you'll have a smile on my face, because those are really painful discussions and processes to go through, because what Amy Jo just said is the classic argument. You have these events that benefit the community. A lot of them are philanthropic. A lot of them run their event to fund the charitable good that they do in the community. But at the same time, there is a business aspect to the pavilion and providing that for weddings, and you don't want to limit the potential realization. So, you know, a lot of communities define their events that are those community celebrations, and maybe there's a discounted or an established rate for an annual event like the 4th of July, like the Food Truck Fest. The question then becomes is where do you cut that off, and what events are included, and when the next group wants to do a similar event, how do you deal with that? And so these are all, no one's ever figured out the perfect answer to this question, because every community struggles with this. And you want those events, but you also want to, the worst thing that happens is when you have an event that undersells what it is, and you have a conflict with a wedding group, and it's usually not the bride or groom, but it's a parent of one of them that you end up dealing with that isn't real happy about the situation.
So here we are.
Yeah.
So just a couple of things. I know in the past, prior to the $1,500 to rent the Fireman's Park, like the green space and the open shelters, we did have a rate of $500. And I think that's fair, but then again, it's the, you know, the pavilion parking and stuff, so.
Can we do something like that and say that if you rent more than one facility at the theme park, then there's a green space fee or something?
So then what about the people that rent the pavilion and they're having an outdoor wedding on the green space? I don't.
It's only
I don't,
one facility. But I see your point, because it's the same green space.
Hotels maybe rent the green space separate.
I'm sorry?
Hotels will make you rent the green space separate.
Or do we like divide the park, that the open shelters and the scout cabin area is one section? You're allowed to have that area, and then the pavilion is the pavilion in the green space.
Definitely
That may work.
Sounds like some things that should be considered when the new
Okay.
park gets designed.
But I have 2 rentals coming up that I need to have answers for. So, but,
We got
now
a
you have an
couple-
idea.
Couple more comments over here. Alder Reed?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I definitely would not want to try to charge events that are open to the public and enrich the life of the city. I wouldn't want to charge them the same thing you would for a private wedding. Nothing close to it. I do like the idea of leaning towards the $500 green space charge. I would not add an additional charge onto the wedding fee, but it would definitely need to be noted that on this particular date, the green space is already booked.
Sure.
For any possible wedding on that date, and maybe they could get a bit of a discount for the loss of an option. I don't know, just starting to throw little things out there.
Alder Ross?
We have time to discuss it Monday night, correct? In our meeting,
We sure do.
to come back as your or committee, then bring recommendations back.
And I am doing my agenda
And
tomorrow.
And that's Monday? So
Yeah,
why don't we?
Monday.
I've got all your edits in there
Perfect.
now, so she can take an up-to-date draft of all the edits she's given me so far. And then you guys can work off that one.
Okay,
Okay.
I mean, that'd be easier, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
All right, very good. Anything further from you two on this?
No, I just want to point out that the next two sections are the building permit area and the development fees. So the permitting area did get completely missed. I missed Mike's changes, but they're fairly straightforward when you see them. It's just changing something like from 125 to 130, the square footage amount. So those are pretty straightforward. There's a few of them that Mike's recommended I consolidate into one. And then in the development fees, most of his changes are already in here. I might have a couple more changes, but most of the development fee ones were already in here. I did catch those. I'll look over the final draft that Mike gave me again, 'cause I think some additional rates may have changed, but the conceptual changes are already in. So at this point, I guess, if you see anything now specifically, other than what we talked about for parks, then we can try and answer those questions now. But no, I will get you a new draft as soon as possible out. So I don't have to wait. We don't have to wait till the agenda gets posted, right? Okay. Yeah, as soon as I have all the edits in, I will go ahead and email out a draft.
So once receiving the draft, would we have this on the next agenda for approval?
There's two options as I see. We can
Yeah.
put the updated draft on the council agenda, or we could do, I think the intent here, especially on the development side with the building permit fees, is we'd like to get the new fees enacted as soon as we can.
Correct.
So we were targeting the 21st. We could do a special council, or we could just put the change document on the council agenda at the next meeting. Whatever your,
And if we do put it on the council agenda, if there's some changes you make, we would note them at that point, and the fee schedule could go into place with the amended changes that you're suggesting at that point.
Alder Ross?
Two things. I would support the changed document being put on right under the council on the 21st. And secondly, page 60, I believe there's a typo under the annexation with agreement. It's only $250, but we got to deposit $5,000.
Okay. So which line are you on?
It's right here.
The second.
Oh, that's in the old fee schedule. That's not even a change. Yeah.
Are you sure it wasn't supposed to be 500?
That's what I'm wondering. Because everything else is doubled almost, or the same.
Yeah, that's not even a change. That's an old number. So,
But I think it's an old incorrect number.
yeah, I would imagine it was 500 because most of our deposits are not less than 500.
Mike,
I can look at my old notes from a year ago.
Mike, you don't see any reason that that'd be a $5,000 deposit, do you?
The idea on
That's
some of
from a
these
year
is
ago.
to have a deposit to cover consultant fees and draw from that on annexation. So I guess I haven't been through that with the city on what our fees on that would be.
Perhaps that's something you could check on.
Yeah.
Well,
It should be the other way around, actually.
it's interesting that the without agreement has no deposit and the with agreement has a $5,000 deposit. I think we've got to do some work there and clean that up, but it's a good note that we need to take
I
a
don't
look
even
at.
know what that means.
Annexation itself generally doesn't have a lot of professional involvement. It's the other parts of post-annexation where the professional work is.
Okay. Alder Moda?
I'm recommending that we move it forward to council and you just bring points to us to look at on things that you've changed.
Everybody good with that? Okay. Anything further, Crystal?
Nope, I got my directions.
All right, we will move that forward then. All right.
Move to adjourn.
Oh, Molly's not here. Holy smokes, yeah. Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion by Alder Lawson, second by Alder Moda to adjourn. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Atta boy.